www.theleaguefantasyfootball.wordpress.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at The League Podcast and on Twitter at The League Pod. All of our podcasts will be posted on SoundCloud at The League Podcast as well.
Are you ready? Oh, I'm ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
Let's do this.
Let's do this thing, man.
The League Podcast.
Yeah.
How's it going, guys? You got J&D here with The League Podcast. We are back, and we are in black.
Baby, we back. I'm excited, Dale.
Oh, man, I'm so excited. I mean, it's been way too long since we've been on, and, we've been talking about it every single day since the end of last year, so it's good to finally be officially back in the studio and getting our thing going.
It's great. It is really great. And, we've been doing tons of mocks. I mean, since there was mocks that came out on Yahoo and NFL, and we've been doing mocks like crazy, and we finally got crazier and did a high risk real deal draft. So preach to them a little bit. They'll tell us what that's about.
Well, it's
exactly how it sounds.
Yeah, it's exactly how it sounds. I mean, you really think about it, it's high risk. I mean, we haven't even started training camp yet, so we don't even know really who's starting, who's not starting. There's tons of positional battles that, we'll go over today. But essentially, you're just doing a draft way early and hoping for the best, hoping that you grab guys that eventually, by the time draft season comes, will be getting drafted higher than what you got them at, and it's better value for yourself.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was awesome. It was a late night Saturday. That's what it was.
But the needle was in, to say the least.
Yeah, after we did like 3 or 4 mock drafts, we're like, all right, let's just do a real one, and gathered up the troops, and we made it happen. Had a couple buddies at Cali Roots, they were out there partying up in Monterey, and, still got those guys. One of them had to get auto-drafted half the time because he couldn't even see straight.
But our brothers, good looking out for joining. Yeah. Now we all got teams pretty stacked up. And, shout out to everyone who got on this because it's a high risk, it's a scary thing to do.
It is. And, it's really exciting. I can't wait to get to it. But first, I really do want to kind of touch base on something I did over the weekend as well. We're big Madden players. We love to play Madden, nonstop,
sure
really. Whenever we get a chance when there's no, crying baby or nagging wife, you know what I mean?
Hallelujah.
But anyways, I had some time. I did a fantasy draft on Madden. Love my team. Building a dynasty, I should say. Obviously, I started out with Nick Foles as my quarterback with the thoughts of having Trevor Lawrence become my quarterback. And
that's the beauty of Madden. You can plan for years ahead with the franchise
yeah, if you
mode.
play that franchise mode, and it's kind of like a fantasy draft essentially doing this stuff. And I played a little bit of it yesterday, and I stopped at the draft because I didn't get who I wanted, so I quit in hopes that I turn it back on and the draft hasn't started. I can trade up further up so I can get my guy.
It's also the beauty of Madden is you can manipulate it like a motherfucker.
But anyways, yeah, I had a great time. If you do not play Madden, I highly recommend it. And if you love fantasy drafts as much as we do, I highly recommend doing a franchise because it's not the same exact thing, but it's almost the same thing with building your team up and doing what you want with it. So
and one last thing on that note. Bring NCAA back, all right? That's what we really want.
I know, right? I know myself, Jay, my brothers, we all absolutely love NCAA. It was our life. We love Madden too, but
I can't imagine.
There was nothing like NCAA back in the day.
Yeah, and what it's going to be like soon, I hope, because there's been a lot of chatter about it. I want to start a revolution from this podcast on just being at NCAA's front doors, chanting, getting stuff going. Rallies together for getting NCAA back because we need it.
We need it. You know who could be the face of that is Juju because Juju's the face of Madden right now. So
it's your boy. We'll see. What really brought us here today, and obviously this is what we do. So we're gonna be coming at you guys with a lot of stuff now that football is right around the corner. We're 99 days away. Less than 100 days away from football. So it's about to be 100 days of football madness between J and D here. So we brought you here today because we want to recap our high-risk fantasy draft and go through all of our picks, a lot of these players, different tiers between running backs, receivers, tight ends, and see where guys are going. And it's going to be funny to see where these guys are going now and how much it's going to change by the time draft time really comes around, at the end of preseason.
Yeah, so typically, we were going to do our IDP or I'm sorry, ADP, average draft position. I didn't think that sounded right. But we did this real draft over the weekend, and we figured we might as well jump into it with our real draft. I did draft a little bit differently than I usually would, but I think it was for the better and it was fun. Anyways, next week we will be bringing you our positional rankings: quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, kickers, defenses. Day by day, we'll give you each tier. We'll go over some other news and some other topics throughout the week as well. So stay tuned for next week as well. We'll be bringing you one every day. You know.
I definitely I looked at Dylan crazy, but I am absolutely down.
I mean, that's the goal.
That's the goal.
We'll be out of town together, so there's no excuse.
There's gonna be a lot of weeks where you're gonna be getting them every day, no doubt.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just wanted to give you guys a little taste of what next week looks like. But let's just get started today. What do you say? Obviously, we have a long draft, 16 rounds, I believe. We're gonna go pretty much round by round with our players and kind of why we chose our players, and then we'll talk about some other positional rankings or people that are being chosen in the same round that we had to decide between, and we want to know kind of what you guys would do in that situation. So. Anyways, we'll go over that, and yeah, hopefully we'll get done with this sooner than later and be able to talk about a couple other things that we wanted to cover.
Absolutely. Well, I think we start right at the top, Dill. I mean, we have round one.
Yeah, and I actually got the first pick.
Who has the first pick? Oh, just the guy who set up the league. No coinciding there. But I'm not complaining. I was only 2 picks behind him with the third pick. So I kind of think, Dill, we'll start with your pick. We'll go through briefly all the picks in each round, but mainly focus on our 2 picks. And then if there are some shining little stars in here that we need to mention, let's mention. But Dill, with the first overall pick in the first round of the 2019 NFL highest risk draft of the year, who'd you take and why?
I had a couple different options. Obviously, I had plenty of options at the first overall pick, but I feel like there's only 2 ways you can go here. 2 of the safest players in the draft I had to decide between were Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, I'm a huge Rams fan. I love Todd Gurley. I'm starting to get a little concerned about the knee. It just keeps getting talked about. I keep telling Jay that I'm not going to believe anything until Todd Gurley gets out on the field or he personally comes out and says my knee's not right. But this being a high-risk draft and, me having the first pick, and who knows if I'm going to have the first pick again. Who knows if I'm going to be able to get my hands on Saquon Barkley. Seriously. I loved watching him play last year so much. Every single game he brought so much excitement. I mean, the guy almost caught 100 passes last year as a running back. Not to mention he had 1,300 yards rushing, 15 total touchdowns. I mean, this guy is a beast. We all know that. He obviously had Odell on his team to kind of take away some of that attention, but at the same time, they did beef up that offensive line with that trade with the Browns, getting Ziegler or whatever his name is, and I do think that Saquon is in for another big year, and he's going to catch a lot of passes. So if you're in a PPR league just like us, he's pretty much him or a couple other guys you can't go wrong with, but Saquon I think is the number 1 guy, so that's why I went with him. Safe
bet right there, no doubt. I think. The next pick is up in the air, obviously, because you have, like you said, Zeke Elliott is another guy who, before the drama after that video at EDC when he was at the rave, he was arguably, you could argue him for the first overall pick.
Yeah.
But in our draft, he was taken second, and just like Dill said, I think the 2 safest guys in this draft are Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley. I was at 3, so Zeke went second. Number 3, I have ranked number 1 overall, Christian McCaffrey, on my player ranking. So I had my number 1 player just fall to me at 3. I shouldn't say fall to me. He didn't fall very far. But
being your number 1 player, obviously,
being my number 1 player. And you talk about Saquon almost having 100 catches. He only had 91. You're talking about a Christian McCaffrey who reached 107 catches last year for 867 yards and 6 touchdowns off just catches. Not to mention his over 1,000 rushing yards on 7 touchdowns. And guess what else he did? Not only that, he threw a 50-yard touchdown pass. So my man Christian McCaffrey is about to do it all. Not to mention he got jacked this season. The man is yoked as can be. I know Ron Rivera talked about decreased workload, but I mean, he touched the ball 90%. I mean, he was in the offense 90% of the time last year, and I just don't see a significant drop off in Christian McCaffrey's usage. Even if they bring him out for breathers, that's fine. I don't mind that at all. They didn't get anyone significant behind him. I'm super excited about Christian McCaffrey this year. I think Saquon, though, did edge him out last year to be the number 1 running back. I think that changes this year. I think Christian McCaffrey gets Saquon this year and gets that number 1 spot overall. That's my prediction. I got him at 3. Super happy about that. And then, moving on, number 4 is another guy that is arguably, still Zeke used to be arguably, you used to be able to argue for the first pick. Alvin Kamara was the number 4th guy taken here. He's also arguably, you can make a statement for being the number 1 pick overall because Mark Ingram's gone, and they have one of the highest powered offenses in the league, and
we know what Alvin Kamara can do. I mean, that guy's just electric. He literally, I mean, you give him the ball, he's getting the ball. He'll still make 5 guys miss. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, anytime he gets the ball in his hand, he's so dangerous. And once again, another pass catcher that's going to catch a lot of balls from Drew Brees, who loves to check it down to Alvin Kamara, who, once again, in open field can do so many different things. So, I agree on that completely. So, anyways, we got, through round 1, 3, 4 more running backs after. Then the end, surprisingly, we 9, 10, 11, 12, all receivers.
Look at that.
To follow into the next round, another receiver, a tight end, and then James Conner in the second round.
Receiver run, end of the first and beginning of the second.
I think James Conner in that second round is a steal. I think he potentially could be a first-round value at the end of the year.
I think where that run of through 9 through 12 in the first round is definitely a James Conner spot in there.
And I do want to talk about another player before we get to our picks. Devontae Freeman going in the second round. We've been doing so many mock drafts. And, I mean, both of us love Devontae Freeman, and we both have him pretty high up in our rankings, despite him missing majority of last year.
Sure.
He goes in the second round. I was hoping that he would fall to the third, fourth round.
In this round was hoping he would be falling to me. I got someone else, but he went higher than I thought he would. Space Dust Mike doing his homework just like we are. I feel like Devontae's a huge bounce back candidate this year, 100%. I mean, the writing's on the wall. You know, they didn't draft. I mean, they didn't draft another running back. They got Vito Smith. 2
linemen in the first round
just to boost up that run game, that pat, whatever it may be.
They want to run the ball.
The writing's on the wall. Yeah. So I think it was a great reach in a sense, even though I don't feel like that's a reach, even though he was down there in the rankings on ESPN. But I feel like that's a great pick right there, and I love the mention. Devontae Freeman, get him if you can, no doubt.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to your pick, Jay.
Sure.
You're number 10 of the second round.
Yep.
You had chosen Christian McCaffrey to start off. So are you going running back receiver, running back tight end? Where are you going here?
So, I was really torn with this pick. I was torn with a few of my picks, especially with the next round. But with the 22nd overall pick, I was really, really hoping, like I said, I would love to get Amari Cooper or Keenan Allen, and those 2 guys went right before my pick. So I could have had that number 1 running back with a top end wide receiver. I got to my pick and it was Dalvin Cook top of the board, and I'm like, oh man, I'm loving what that offense, and just like we talked about with Devontae Freeman with the writing on the wall, they got rid of Latavius Murray. They did draft Alexander Mattison in the 3rd round, who's a big guy, 221 pounds. I feel like that's going to be a goal line guy. He's going to take away some of, give
the pounding that Dalvin Cook gets.
Give him a breather and get them down the field and get them first downs and just keep the ball going.
What Latavius Murray was doing.
Exactly. He's just a complete replacement for Latavius Murray. We got to think about this too. Dalvin Cook ended the year. I mean, you had Dalvin Cook at the end of the year, or most of the year.
Yeah.
Weeks 12 through 16, he averaged over 19 fantasy points. I mean, he was a monster last year. At the end of the year, not to mention they drafted Garrett Bradbury in the 1st round this year. One of my favorite offensive linemen, obviously. I mean, in this draft, I think he's one of the most sound guys. Drafted him at center in the 1st round to just boost up that offensive lineman more. I really, like I said with Devontae, once again, I think the writing's on the wall, and I couldn't pass up on Dalvin Cook's the possible usage this year. And I just, every time he touches the ball, I get that weird feeling that he could take it to the house. He's just one of those guys that is so explosive and really has that speed that he doesn't look super fast but can break away pretty quickly. And I'm excited about what Dalvin Cook can do, even though he's in my division, Packers division. So I hate taking Vikings, but a Viking like Dalvin Cook or even an Adam Thielen or Stephon Diggs, I would take all day. But I went with Dalvin Cook in this pick, and I'm not looking back. I went the 2 running back route, and just wait, it's not over. I got more to come. But
yeah, I love the pick. I love Dalvin Cook. I've had him the last couple of years, and I mean, when he's healthy, he is a top 10 running back, hands down.
Yeah.
So
And
having those two guys on top of each other, I mean,
and this was also tough because where I was okay, either I drafted Joe Mixon or Dalvin Cook. Those were the 2 running backs out there right there. Or I go for a Mike Evans. Or, even get crazy and do a Zach Ertz in the second round, into the second round. But I was really looking for that receiver or running back just to boost that up. So Mike Evans was a heavy consideration right there too. So, piggybacking off that, I'll just transfer that off to you, Dill.
Obviously I had to wait 24 picks to go again, and I'm in a situation where I have Saquon Barkley, and I didn't know what to do. I really wanted Dalvin Cook or Joe Mixon. I really wanted to go the 2 running back route. Obviously, Dalvin Cook and Joe Mixon went off the board immediately right in front of me. So I was in a situation where I had to go with a top tier receiver like Mike Evans, who I have at my ranked number 10 receiver, and there's been 10 taken in front of me. So now I'm getting pretty good value for him. Obviously, I look at the running backs still available, Leonard Fournette, Nick Chubb, Damian Williams. Those guys are all top players on my list as well. Nick Chubb is number 10 on my list for running backs. There is some question marks in terms of Kareem Hunt. Obviously, we were talking about it yesterday. I really like Nick Chubb a lot. I just don't know what happens once he comes back into the fold. Kareem Hunt comes back in the fold. Leonard Fournette obviously is proven to be trouble. Obviously he's shown that he can be a top 5 running back. He's been drafted top 5 in drafts previous years, but obviously the last couple of years injuries have really killed him.
Yeah. I'm very high this year on Leonard.
I'm really excited.
He's one of those other bounce back
yeah.
candidates.
I believe he's on a contract year too. So I do think Leonard Fournette does get a boost this year, but I really wanted to go with more for sure bet and a top receiver, because receivers will dwindle by the time I get down to my next pick. So I'm happy I did this. I went with Mike Evans. This guy nobody's talking about him, and it's crazy to me. He ended last year as a top 5 receiver. He had over 1,500 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns, 86 receptions. I mean, we play in a PPR league, like I said, so if you're getting those receptions and the yardage, I mean, it's a steal in this sense. And I mean, every year he produces. Every year he's been in the league, he's gone over 1,000 yards. Multiple times gone over 12 touchdowns. So, and
not to mention he's playing with Jameis Winston, who's on a contract year and is hit. They have great chemistry already together. So I feel like if there was a year you'd want Mike Evans, I think this was, and just like you said, no one's talking about him. I think he's a candidate every year to be a top receiver pick, and not to mention, like, this year is going to be big for them. I think that whole Bucs offense, in my opinion, with Bruce Arians taking over that team, I'm really excited about what the Bucs bring.
I'm really excited about the Mike Evans pick, and honestly, I've never had Mike Evans, and every year I'm like, dang, he's a baller. He's always scoring 20 points. I'm like, dang, I wish I had him on my team. So I really am happy to have him on my team now. Obviously, round 3, I follow up with once again, I was in a situation where I really thought about taking those running backs. But obviously, I love having a top-tier tight end. So I hear that. Was so excited to have a choice between, obviously, Zach Ertz and George Kittle. What's his name? Travis Kelce was taken with the second pick of the second round. Yeah. So he was gone early.
Top 14 pick.
Yeah. Which, I think he might be worth it, especially with the whole Tyreek Hill thing.
Kareem Hunt's gone. Well, obviously Damian Williams is a beast. But, Travis Kelce is going to have a lot of targets this year.
Yeah. So, obviously I had Zach Ertz, George Kittle. I love both those players, Last year I traded Zach Ertz away very early in the year. Got a nice return out of it. I actually got George Kittle in return. And I rode George Kittle majority of the season, and he won me a lot of games.
And then what'd you do with George, Dill?
I traded him.
Yeah.
Because I had O.J. Howard.
For what again?
I don't
half a bag?
Half a bag of pennies.
Poor guy. I think that'll haunt you forever.
Devin Funchess.
You had 2 of the top 3 tight ends most of the year, and then...
they both got hurt. Or, I'm sorry, O.J. Howard. I loved O.J. Howard. He was balling out, so I was like, okay, obviously I need to trade one of these guys. I don't know why I chose Kittle. I really just. I don't know why I chose Devin Funchess. Anyways, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
That was a trade last year that went down. That was shocked the fantasy world.
It lost me in my league.
Anyhow, with that first pick in the third round deal,
I got
back to back.
I mean, Zach
you
Ertz,
went with tight end.
Yeah,
Zach
he
Ertz.
set a record for 116 receptions for a tight end in a season. Obviously, 1,100 yards, almost 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. He is a top receiver in Philadelphia. He is Carson Wentz's number one guy. And Carson Wentz looks to him every single time. So once again, he lines up in the slot like a receiver. He lines up in the box as a tight end. I mean, he's on the field pretty much every single play. Yes, there's Dallas Goedert or whatever his name is. He's going to play a lot as well, but they do a lot of 2 tight end sets. So
they do a
doesn't concern me whatsoever. Doesn't concern me
I think they're both going to eat. Zach
Absolutely, but I think that Zach's going to be the guy once again. I do think he had a full season last year of health. Like, he's had issues with health, that's been a big hit on him. He played all of last year, every single game, which really makes me happy. It makes me feel better about this year. And anyways, yeah, so, I mean, you can't go wrong with the Zach Ertz in the third round.
At all.
Starting my team off with Saquon Barkley, Mike Evans, and Zach Ertz, three guys at the top of their position. Feeling really good about my team right now. Going into that third pick of the third round, Jake, what did you go with?
Yeah, so right in between us, you picked Zach Ertz. I was Leonard Fournette had my name written all over him, and of course he was taken right before me. So it threw me for a bit of the loop. I remember with this pick, I took it down to probably 2 seconds left before I made my pick because I was so torn on what to do. There was a couple more running backs in the fold here. There was also some receivers in the third round that I wouldn't necessarily have to reach for, but I would have. There was just this group of guys up there that I couldn't pass up. But for me, it was really in between because I still have 2 running backs. I still don't have a receiver. So I was really thinking T.Y. Hilton or A.J. Green. Yet I continue to look at the receiver depth, and I'm like, gosh, there are a lot of receivers. Yeah, it does fall. It does. But there are a lot of receivers. You only get the opportunity to draft a top tight end very, very, few in between, in my opinion. And with George Kittle still on the board, he is one of 3 tight ends that I'd take in the first 3 rounds. And if George Kittle wasn't out there, I wouldn't be taking a tight end until probably the 9th round or later, probably 10th round or later. And that's how I usually do my fantasy draft. So this one was a little different, but there's nothing like having a tight end that can win at that position every single week and make up for other positions that don't do it for you, like Zach Ertz and George Kittle and Travis Kelce do. Those are the only 3 guys I would take in the first 3 rounds. But talk about setting records. Zach Ertz set a reception record. George Kittle last year set a receiving yards record with 1,377 yards. That's never been done. He broke that record. 2-year pro. I think he goes into this year and is a complete leader of that offense and one of the leaders of that offense. Not to mention, he did that with 3 different quarterbacks last year. So that's
lower tier, like unknown nobody.
Nobody. So that's so impressive. That just goes to show how much of a baller George Kittle is. And they did make some acquisitions this year, obviously with Deebo Samuel, who I'm a big fan of. I think Dante Pettis has a bigger role in that offense. But at the end of the day, George Kittle is going to be their go-to guy. And when you're able to get someone like that, I was like, I can't pass up on it. And I knew Dylan loves George Kittle too, so I was thinking trades potentially. But
I would love to have him in my flex.
I realistically didn't even realize you drafted Zach Ertz, honestly. So, but I couldn't be happier to have George Kittle, even though now I'm even in a more horrible spot with my receiver because I've gone 3 rounds now without a receiver. I got Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, and then George Kittle in the top of the 3rd round. So going through the rest of the 3rd round, though, we have some really good running backs, in my opinion. Nick Chubb and Damian Williams to top that list. And,
that's like the end of a tier right there for me. Like that. Damian Williams is that end of that 3rd tier, I would say.
With Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon.
2nd tier, yeah. And after that, we go to another tier of receivers. I mean, obviously, Pat Mahomes is taken, and then Julian Edelman, T.Y. Hilton, A.J. Green, Stephon Diggs, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, all taken in a row.
Yep.
Tons of receivers off the board. At this point, I'm sweating a little bit. My top tier of running backs are done. My 2nd tier of receivers are done. So I'm in that next tier of running back and receiver, and I'm hoping I land a couple guys. And a lot of these guys at the top of the 4th round got taken.
And, like Dylan had mentioned already, we with the first and third picks we are waiting 20 picks
Yeah.
go by. So a huge chunk of players are going by the end of the round. You know what I mean? So
I mean, at the top of this round, we got tons of running backs: Sony Michel, Mark Ingram, Aaron Jones, Marlon Mack, Kerryon Johnson, Josh Jacobs, and David Montgomery, all taken in the 4th round. So that leads to say we want to talk about these running backs and kind of what directions we want to go in. Obviously, Sony Michel was taken first. How do you feel about Sony Michel this year?
I'm back and forth. I really think he proved a lot to me last year on just skill. I really liked what I saw out of Sony at the end of the year. I really did. I'm always so scared of when teams have just a plethora of running backs, because it's always so cloudy. At the end of the day, I do think Sonny has carved out his role in that offense and is that lead back in a sense. Not to say Rex Burkhead and James White still aren't going to be involved in that offense, because that's what the Patriots do. But I think when you're looking at the latter towards of the year of the season, they're going to be really relying on Sony to get that run game going and pound the ball, because that's what he did at the end of the last year. And I liked what I saw out of him. I am not comfortable taking him, I'd have him as a RB2, on my team. I wouldn't be happy to have him as a RB1 and relying on him week to week. But that's kind of my thoughts on him. Someone that got taken right after him, the second player in the 4th round, is Mark Ingram, who I'd much rather have. I see Mark Ingram as a high RB2, even low-end RB1 area, in my opinion. And I think we're both pretty high on Ingram, so...
Yeah, that's definitely who I was kind of hoping to land in this situation, because once again, Mark Ingram is a little bit lower than most of these running backs on this list. But obviously, with Sony Michel getting taken, Mark Ingram getting taken, and then Aaron Jones right after being taken, there's still a couple guys like Marlon Mack, Kerryon Johnson. In my case, I'm looking at Josh Jacobs, and I'm like, okay, these guys are all top of my list to take my next pick. Obviously, all of them got taken. Aaron Jones, I love what he can do in Green Bay. Obviously, I know that you love him as well.
I was definitely hoping that was going to be my pick, or one of them. I'm torn on Aaron Jones too, even though I want him so bad. He is going to be that lead guy. I don't know what it is. He's just had issues in the past too when it comes to health or suspensions or whatever it may be. And something always happens every year, but this really could be the year where Aaron Jones plays a full 16 and he starts to become a household name. But yeah, he went with the 4th pick in that 4th round. And then right after that, a quarterback, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield gets taken pretty high. I mean, the only other person that went before him is Pat Mahomes in last round, I believe.
Yeah.
So Baker Mayfield, the second quarterback off the board in the 4th round, mid-4th round. That's saying something.
That's Julian right there.
Julian took a reach, and I don't doubt him for it. I don't knock him for it. Baker Mayfield, I think, is a stud, and look at that offense this year. So Baker went. Another running back, Kerryon Johnson, who. What is your opinion on Kerryon Johnson this year?
I think Kerryon Johnson's a beast. I think that, the coach came out, the offense coordinator came out yesterday and said, we want to run the ball. We want to run the ball, and Kerryon Johnson's their number one guy. He's the number one guy in their offense, and I think he's going to get a lot of run this year. But once again, health issues. Mm-hmm. He's a risky guy with his health. But if he can stay healthy, he's got a great opportunity in Detroit. Personally, I haven't been drafting him, and I don't know if I'll draft him in the 4th round, maybe 5th round, but...
I think that's a little high for my blood, honestly, because, talk about, again, cloudy backfields. They did acquire C.J. Anderson, who I know you don't think is going to make a huge impact on that offense.
I think that C.J. Anderson...
I thought we had a talk, and you were like, no, don't. I'm not really concerned about it.
I was really thinking about it. Obviously, C.J. Anderson in the right system is a really good running back.
Of course. And we saw it. You know it firsthand if anyone does.
If Kerryon Johnson does get hurt, it could be C.J. Anderson's job. Mm-hmm. So, that being said, obviously it's Kerryon Johnson's job right now, but if anything happens, just like last year with the Rams, Gurley hurt, C.J. came in and balled out.
Mm-hmm. And then what about they still have Theo Riddick.
Yeah, they do. They still have Theo Riddick.
Every year, he just kind of creeps in, gets that PPR usage, and, that's where, in the 4th round, Kerryon Johnson, that's a little too high for me. I'm a little nervous on what his
He's a great pass catcher, though.
Kerryon's a great player. I love the guy, but just like you mentioned, the health, I think by the end of the year, that's where I get worried, is how many games is he actually going to play? How much of a role is he really going to carve out? All those question marks. But... maybe this is the year where he really is that guy that everyone says he's going to be.
So out of Sony Michel, Mark Ingram, Aaron Jones, Marlon Mack, Kerryon Johnson. Who do you want out of that group of guys?
The most comfortable guy I'm taking is Mark Ingram. I think the Baltimore Ravens are going to pound the rock this year. They signed Mark Ingram to a 3-year deal. They're going to use him. They only have Gus Edwards behind him and
Gus the Bus.
But, I really don't think the two other guys.
Besides Ingram, who's your next guy out of this group of people? What do you think about Marlon Mack?
I'm really intrigued by Marlon Mack. I think if he plays a full 16, we're talking about possibly a top 5 guy. Realistically, that offensive line, they've added a lot of weapons. I think we saw Marlon Mack. I mean, he had how many over 30-point games last year?
Yeah.
The guy can ball. I'm really excited about him. I would so much rather have a Marlon Mack over a Kerryon Johnson in this round. And Aaron Jones is right on that list with me too, because I think this could be, like I said, the year. So,
were you disappointed with your pick in this round?
I wasn't disappointed.
Were you hoping for another guy? One of those other running backs?
I think I might have, instead of, because so let's get to my pick here. We got, after Kerryon Johnson, we have Calvin Ridley go, who I think we're both pretty high on. Yeah. I love Calvin this year. I love Calvin, period. He's a baller. Then the third quarterback comes off the board, who I currently have as my number 1 quarterback, is Deshaun Watson. So one pick before my pick, the 10th pick in the 4th round, Deshaun Watson goes. So that's 2 quarterbacks in the 4th round going. And then my pick comes around, and I am sitting on 2 running backs and a tight end, all right? I still don't have a receiver. You would think I would go receiver right now, but I don't. The top receiver that was out there, I thought a lot would fall. They all went on a major run. Didn't see a lot of wide receiver talent there, in a sense, because I do love Tyler Lockett. He was at the top of the board when it comes to receivers for me. And it's funny because every guy that I was looking at, you ended up probably swinging around and getting. But Tyler Lockett was probably the number 1 receiver out at this time, the end of the 4th round. Almost went with him, but I went for upside in a sense. I pulled the trigger on another running back, rookie running back Josh Jacobs. I think, as we all know, with the injury to Isaiah Crowell, I really think Josh Jacobs is just has no. I mean, obviously Jalen Richard, however you want to say it, whatever his last name is, but there's gonna be guys just like taking some third down work and whatnot. But Josh Jacobs is gonna be the lead back in this offense. I mean, they also, not to mention, have the 9th easiest schedule for running backs. So he's looking at a pretty easy schedule. I mean, they didn't draft this guy in the 1st round for no reason. They were worried that I think the Eagles were going to trade up ahead of them and take him. So when they ended up getting, Josh Jacobs falling to them, it was heaven sent. John Gruden was begging Mike Mayock to call Josh Jacobs to give him the news that they were drafting him. I also, just on stats, there's rookie running backs average 280 touches drafted in the 1st round. So in the last 5 years, every running back that's been drafted in the 1st round averages 280 touches their 1st year. I don't know if Josh Jacobs will hit that 280, but that's good for me. I mean, I'm interested in his upside, and that's someone that I'm pretty interested to see play, and I want to see successful because we know his story and whatnot. So I went for it. I went now 3 running backs in the first 4 rounds, and I was excited about it. I really was until until I got to the more receivers. I really think that, not that I regret this pick, but I think that I should have possibly taken an Alshon Jeffrey or a Tyler Lockett with this pick just to have a better receiver than I currently do with my team. But when you have 3 running backs, you have that 3rd running back who could be an RB1 in a sense as your flex. I ain't complaining either. So we'll just see how it plays out. But
when a team drafts a running back in the 1st round, they're not drafting him to put him on the bench. They're drafting him to play him.
Yep.
Unless you turn out to be Rashad Penny, who just didn't do anything. They gave him plenty of opportunity, though.
But he also, too, had a Chris Carson in front of him, I think Chris Carson is definitely the better back.
But even Chris Carson had to end up beating him out for the job. They gave the job to Rashad Penny.
They did. You're right.
So they're going to give Josh Jacobs the job, and he has all the opportunity in the world to run away with it. It's all in his hands now.
And everyone talks about the amount they used him at Alabama, like it wasn't enough. You didn't see enough out of him. I think that's really good. I think he's going to be fresh coming into the NFL. He can catch. He can find the holes. He's pretty fast at the end of the day. I mean, I like Josh Jacobs a lot, so I'm excited to see what he brings. But what do you know? The pick right after me is an Alshon Jeffrey, who I probably should have went with. Carson Wentz is looking on really fire. Yeah. So I'm excited about that whole Philadelphia offense in a sense, besides that backfield. But anyhow, Alshon Jeffrey right after me, and then Dill, you have the last pick of the 4th round, and I think we see another rookie.
Yeah, so I had this opportunity. I really looked at receivers and running backs. Obviously, I looked at the depth at both positions, and I have 2 picks in a row. So I know I needed to go 1-1. Running back is really, really slim now. It's that next tier of running backs. A lot went off the board. I'm looking at, Tariq Cohen, James White, Derrick Henry, Chris Carson, Philip Lindsay, Kenyon Drake. A lot of good players, actually. A lot of solid running backs that, I would usually take in like a mock draft. I usually would go with a Chris Carson or a Philip Lindsay, maybe even a Kenyon Drake. But this is my second running back. This is a guy that I need to depend on and score me a lot of points week by week. James White, so up and down because he's a third down back. Tariq Cohen, same thing, so up and down because he's a third down back.
Mm-hmm.
Derrick Henry, this guy either gives you 500 yards in one game or he gives you 5 yards in one game. You just don't know what to expect from him. Chris Carson, very consistent last year. I think that he's going to be another top guy if he can stay healthy. He's already had surgery in this offseason, which is a little concerning to me. Philip Lindsay, I think he's going to regress a little bit this year. I would think Royce Freeman steps into a bigger role. So anyways, that being said, there was one guy out there that I strictly drafted for upside and in hopes that he takes the starting job and runs with it, and that's David Montgomery for the Chicago Bears.
You are high on him.
I am very high on him, and I think that he is going to be a huge weapon for the Chicago Bears. This is a team that wants to run the ball, one of the best offensive lines in the league, and they have Tariq Cohen, who, once again, he's a good running back, but he is not a 3-down back. He is someone that goes and makes big plays here and there.
Here and there. I think it's a little more than here and there. He's a stud.
If you look at his stats, he has huge games, and then he has nothing. And then he has a huge game, and then he has nothing. So I shouldn't say huge plays. It's more huge game games. Here, huge game there.
That's viable.
In fantasy, it's really tough to depend on that week by week. I think David Montgomery in that backfield is going to be more of that consistent player like Jordan Howard was.
That makes sense.
Except this is a Jordan Howard that can catch the ball. Ooh. So I know that the offensive coordinator, the head coach, everybody loves this guy because they don't have to take him out on third down. If they want to keep him in and have him catch the ball on third down, they can do that. That's why they brought Mike Davis in, who can do the same exact thing. He can run and he can catch. Mm-hmm. They obviously invested a third-round pick in David Montgomery. It's not a first-round pick like the Raiders did with Josh Jacobs, but it's still a high pick for running back. What they say is third-round running backs or lower are the ones that are supposed to come in and make a pretty immediate impact on the team. I do think that he has a big year. And if he doesn't start out as a starting running back, I do think he eventually takes over because Mike Davis, too, has shown injury concerns in the past. So even if he starts out, he might not be able to stay healthy. Even so, I just think that overall, David Montgomery is a better player. He's also younger, cheaper, and I just think that the Bears want to roll with him. So even if he doesn't start out, I did end up picking Mike Davis up on the waiver wire after the draft because he went undrafted. So I solidified that backfield, but I really am happy with my pick here. That being said, I said I needed a receiver. There were only a couple guys in the same kind of tier, I should say. Tyler Lockett, Sammy Watkins, Chris Godwin, DJ Moore, some guys to name, and really, you want to look at a number one, right? That's what you're kind of aiming for, is you always want to try to get the number one receiver in the offense. And with the news of Doug Baldwin retiring, it really does open up a huge opportunity for Tyler Lockett. Obviously, they invested a high draft capital in DK Metcalf, but as a rookie, I don't see him coming in and taking over. He potentially could. He has all the measurables. He's a freak athlete, He made really big plays in college, but we've seen Tyler Lockett get better each year. And obviously, him scoring, I think, a team high, 10 touchdowns last year.
He sure did.
All year long, Jake was like, "Hey, he's the number one. He's the number one." I'm like, "Just leave me alone, man. I got Doug Baldwin. I don't need Tyler Lockett." Tyler Lockett did finish with a lot more points than Doug Baldwin did. He was their number one last year, and I really am excited to have him as my number 2 on my team behind Mike Evans. And I think both have potential to be a really good core. And I think that Tyler Lockett has potential to have a really good year. I think I've got him ranked at number 21 on my list, so he's in that wide receiver 2 range. But once again, I'm really happy with the pick. Now I have 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a tight end. My lineup's really starting to form really nicely.
I agree. I love that pick. Tyler Lockett I have as a top 20 player in my rankings this year. A top 20 wide receiver.
Yeah.
He's number 18 on my rankings, and you know, I love Lockett. That's
By
my
the
boy.
season, I mean, realistically, he could be in the top 15 for me. You
Yeah.
know, he really could be. It just, and once again, he has a really good connection with Russell Wilson.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
he knows where to go. When Russell's scrambling around trying to get by time, Tyler Lockett understands that he needs to get open in that time frame. So I think they have a great connection, and I'm really excited to see what Tyler Lockett can do this year. Has never broke 1,000 yards. Was very close last year with 965. I do think he breaks 1,000 yards this year.
Yeah, and I really was hoping that he would end up falling to me with my next pick. So I took that running back, Josh Jacobs, and was hoping that, you know, maybe a Mike Evans, that was feeling a little hopeful. I mean, not Mike Evans. I was feeling that Alshon Jeffrey would maybe fall there. Tyler Lockett. I was hoping that one of those guys would be there for sure. Dylan takes Tyler Lockett with the first pick in the fifth round. Then Tyreek Hill goes with the second pick in the fifth round, who is, I thought that was kind of a shocker. I mean, we don't know anything really about what's happening with Tyreek Hill. I don't even think he's really going to play. So I don't know. That was an interesting one for me, but yet another
high risk. If he does end up playing, this is a steal.
Definitely, and yeah, no doubt. I mean, he finished as a top 3 wide receiver.
This is too crucial of building your team out at this point.
So yet another receiver goes. Remember, guys, I still don't have a receiver. I have 4 players on my team, 3 running backs, and a tight end. So you would think I gotta go receiver right here, right? I'm drafting one. Gotta draft one. Get to the third pick in the fifth round. And there are no receivers, let me tell you. I mean, it is dry as the Sahara Desert around there. You know, like Dylan mentioned, there's a DJ Moore. There's Sammy Watkins, who I definitely am high on this year. I think he's going to have a solid year. But in the fifth round, I could not pass up my favorite player in the NFL who has the lowest ADP of his entire career. And that's Mr. Aaron Rodgers. Hallelujah. Where's the applause? I got Aaron Rodgers in the fifth round. I couldn't be more ecstatic. I don't care if I don't have a receiver yet. I have Aaron Rodgers on my team. I don't care. He potentially, I think, is going to end as the top 3 quarterback this year. He's playing with a chip on his shoulder. They've boosted up that team for him. Not only that team, mainly that defense to really, really give Aaron Rodgers more opportunity and give them a fighting chance in games. So I'm super high on Aaron Rodgers this year, as I am every year. But this year, and not to mention getting him around the 5th round, 4th to 5th round, I'll take that every day. I can't see him out of this first to second round in our drafts. I know he goes later than that in a lot of other drafts, but I was so ecstatic to get Aaron Rodgers in the 5th round with this pick. That means now I have 5 players on my team, 5 starters on my team, and still no receiver. And remember, there's 20 picks now before I get to go again. So definitely went a draft route that I usually don't go. I'm a big receiver guy. I usually always go receiver with one of the first 2 round picks, and I didn't. I went way different this go around, but I have Aaron Rodgers, so you know that is what it is. So
you go Aaron Rodgers, and after that, let's see. You know, I already talked about all the running backs that kind of went in that round. Yep. Sammy Watkins gets off the board. Chris Godwin gets off the board. Kenny Golladay gets off the board.
They're dropping. There's a ton of running backs in this 5th round right here. We're talking in, like you already mentioned, right? But there's Chris Carson. There's a Phillip Lindsay. There's a Kenyon Drake. There's a lot of guys who aren't necessarily being talked about a lot who could potentially be big studs in this fantasy year coming up. So, but yeah, so keep going on.
Yeah, so DJ Moore falls, Golden Tate. Now you're on the board.
So I'm back up.
Slim pickings once again, but now we're at a different tier of receivers. So you have a few options here.
Yeah,
you have a decent group of receivers to pick from.
I really, 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 really love Mike Williams. I'm a huge Mike Dub fan this year, every year, but I think, you know, how that offense is shaped out through this offseason, Mike Williams is about to have his breakout year this year, undoubtedly. The only reason I didn't take Mike Williams is I don't know what it is with me. I have this weird logic in a sense, kind of, that I'd rather have the solid number 1 receiver than the second receiver on the team for my receiver number 1. You know what I mean? Because I'm still at the point where I don't have a receiver. So to me, I'm thinking, okay, a wide receiver 1 on a team is probably going to get more targets in a sense than a number 2, but that we know could change, just like Tyler Lockett last year to Doug Baldwin. I was all year preaching to you, like, that's the guy, I'm telling you. And he dumped on Doug Baldwin's stats. But anyhow, I went with a guy who 3 years ago, I'm also a faithful here. He was, a top 3 wide receiver. He won me a championship, and that's Allen Robinson. He came off a decent year. I wouldn't say anything great. He did have a decent amount of targets, almost 100 targets. But he's looking like to be that number 1 guy in an offense who I'm pretty high on. I do like all the weapons they have. They have a really great running game, which only opens up the pass. We know Allen Robinson's potential. I mean, what was it, week 10 or end of the year, close to playoffs?
It was playoffs.
10 receptions, over 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, the guy's a monster. He really is. I think they just need to utilize him more with his first year being on the team. I think they were just learning what to do with Allen Robinson. I think going into this year, he's going to be one of their guys, main guys in that offense. So I went with Allen Robinson with this pick with huge hope, in a sense, being that number 1 guy in that offense, and really hoping at the same time with, four picks later that a Mike Williams would fall to me. But, Dylan will let you take the role there. So next pick after me was Andrew Luck, and then Dylan, you're on the clock. Last pick in the 6th round?
Yeah, so
6th round.
Before Andrew Luck was taken, I really was thinking about taking Andrew Luck with my pick. I haven't gotten a quarterback yet, and obviously I'm really high on Andrew Luck. He's my number 3 rated quarterback in the draft. So to me, getting him in the 6th round would have been a steal. Obviously, he goes right in front of me. Now I have a full roster. I got 2 running backs, 2 receivers, tight end. The only thing I'm really missing is a quarterback to fill out my offense. But I wanted to get some depth. I had to obviously fill my flex position, which, my flex position was really filled by my 7th round pick. But back-to-back, you're going to go 2 in a row anyways. But I'll go with my first one, Miles Sanders, running back from Penn State.
Another rookie running back.
Yes, rookie running back, 2 in a row. Because I have, I have this thing where rookie running backs that are drafted, I think he was in the 3rd round, maybe 4th round. They're getting drafted for a reason. It's a high draft capital. There was still tons of talent out there. The Eagles have a really messy backfield right now. Obviously, they traded for Jordan Howard, who's on a contract year. I think Jordan Howard will be one of their main guys. But I just think that Miles Sanders brings more to the table, being younger and being cheaper. And then once again, they know that they're going to have him for sure for 4 years. As with Jordan Howard, now they have to think about discussing a contract with him at the end of the year. They did not invest too much in the trade with the Bears for Jordan Howard. So,
at all. It was like a 6th round pick.
Yeah, so they're not worried about having him start or not. He has to earn that starting position. And if Miles Sanders even is just as good as him, Miles Sanders will get that starting spot.
But, like you said, just to touch base a little bit on it being 4 years, do you think they're really rushed or pressed into getting him right into that starting role? Because they still got Corey Clement, they still have Wendell Smallwood, they still have Darren Sproles. You talk about a cloudy backfield.
Those guys,
they're definitely not number 1s.
They're not even close. They are good enough. They've made their offense decent. But they obviously are looking for a guy who's a home run hitter who could make their offense get to that next level, which I think Miles Sanders is that guy.
I think this is such a risky pick, in my opinion, and I know you're high on him just because of that cloudiness back there. And, hey, maybe week 1 or 2 he doesn't start, but he then does get that role, and then he runs away with it, and he's that guy. But I think
if we're talking in 2 months when it's time to really draft and he's even considered in the starting spot, he'll be going in the top 5 rounds. Hands down.
No, he almost already is.
Exactly, and that's why, really I reached on him a little bit, but he would have probably been taken before my next pick. Before my next round of picks in the 8th round, this guy would have been gone or close to being gone. I didn't want to risk it. So, being this...
You love him.
I'm really high on him. I just think that...
I think he reminds everyone of Saquon. He looks just like a mini Saquon Barkley.
This guy averaged 6 yards a carry in college.
Monster.
For his career.
You watch his stats. You watch his college tape and you think you're watching Saquon Barkley. He was talked about
as a first-round pick this year. He fell to the 3rd round. There's a lot of running backs always discuss his first-round picks.
Totally.
Anyways, I do have high hopes for him this year. And once again, even if he doesn't start at the beginning, I do have high hopes for him in the season. And I'm once again, this is a high-risk draft. So I'm hoping for the best. That's what I'm doing. So then with my next pick, Jake talked about a lot, was Mike Williams.
Great pick, Dill.
I love the pick, but also, he was a part-time player last year. He didn't play the entire season. He only started 5 games. He played all 16. Obviously scored a ton of touchdowns, had 10 touchdowns. But we're hoping for a huge jump this year. We're hoping that Tyrell Williams is gone now, which will shift him into a every down role. If he's in an every down role, I definitely think that he can double his stats. He had 664 yards. I think he can get 1,200 yards receiving. I think he can have more in the 80 reception range, and hopefully he gets that 10 to 12 touchdown range again, and he'll be one of those top receivers, top 20 receiver, top 15 receiver, and that's really what I'm hoping for with my pick right here. So I'm really stoked to have him in my flex now. I feel like my receivers are pretty solid with Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett, and Mike Williams. Obviously my running backs are still a little shaky. I have one of the best running backs in the game, Saquon Barkley, so he'll take a big chunk of that, but with my next two running backs being two rookies, David Montgomery and Miles Sanders, huge question marks for both those guys. So that being said, I really got to capitalize at some point on a more for sure running back, which, it's a while till I take another one. Let's just say that.
So the tough part about being at the top of the draft board is you wait a long time. But, so yeah, you took Mike Williams. Another guy I know you're super high on is Tyler Boyd, who went right after you. Who I would have loved as my number 2 receiver, undoubtedly. I think both those guys, Mike Dubb and Tyler Boyd, are two of the guys I would have drafted with my 3rd pick in the 7th round, is where we are at. And so I was in a position where I was not looking anywhere else but a receiver, because I now have Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, George Kittle, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Rodgers, and Allen Robinson was the first receiver I took in the 6th round. So I went back-to-back receiver. I was looking at Jarvis Landry. I was looking at Robbie Anderson. I was even looking at Marvin Jones and Sterling Shepard. Those were all 4 guys that I was highly considering. Looking back, I'm not disappointed in my pick, but I just think the guy that I drafted isn't going to have a crazy good year simply because there's so many targets to go around, and that's Jarvis Landry. I went with him simply because of his talent, and I know how explosive that offense can be, but I definitely think the addition of Odell Beckham's going to take away from each other. They're both going to not have crazy big years because I think they're both going to take away from each other, and they're a huge run-first team. So I went with Jarvis strictly for upside. He is my wide receiver too, but looking back, I would have loved to have maybe had a Robbie Anderson or a Sterling Shepard, both being wide receiver 1s in their offense, being my wide receiver 2. So there was a few options here, but like I said, I did go with Jarvis as my wide receiver 2 for strictly upside and talent, because we know what he can do when he gets that ball in his hands. So he didn't have the best year last year, only 81 catches, had just shy of 1,000 yards, which is pretty damn good actually, but career low of only 4 touchdowns, which definitely hurts. And I do think the touchdowns raise up, but I do think the receptions might stay the same, right around that area. So anyhow, that was my 2nd receiver off the board, first pick in the 7th round, and my first pick in the 7th round. And then we kind of, the receivers I talked about after my pick, it kind of goes on a bit of a run. There's a good tier here with Robbie Anderson, Marvin Jones, Sterling Shepard. I like all those guys. Corey Davis, Will Fuller kind of in those boat too, right outside of that, I think. But some other quarterbacks went right after this pick too in the 7th round, such as Drew Brees and Cam Newton.
Matt Ryan
as well. So definitely a little quarterback run right there too.
Carson Wentz right after. I mean, yeah, there was definitely a little run on quarterbacks, which
What I think Carson Wentz in the 8th round is right very after. Good, very good value for him.
But anyways, I mean, like we talked about these receivers, definitely a lot of decent talent in the 7th round. We move on to this 8th round. D.D. Westbrook, I think that's a really questionable pick at the top of the 8th round.
Space Dust Mike, but he knows something.
Yeah, seriously. Corey Davis, I think that's a steal in the 8th round. Number 1 receiver on his offense. It's a really cloudy quarterback situation there. Obviously,
what's cloudy about Marcus Mariota?
I mean, the guy's always hurt, and when he's not hurt, he's either.
I don't think. I think the cloudiness is in the receiver area, because AJ Brown was just drafted. Corey Davis is there. They have other guys in that offense. Corey Davis last year was supposed to be that number 1 guy.
Whenever I watch Mariota play, I just like, what is this guy doing? And then, I mean, I should say very, very few games he's like, wow, that's a great throw. That's a great play.
Yeah. But I think he makes up for those plays on those crazy plays where he does do something crazy. But that's how I feel when I watch Ben Roethlisberger play. I'm like, what is this guy doing? How is he even out there? But then he has those 400-yard games, 4 touchdowns. Anyhow. So, yeah, Corey Davis, I think, 2 is good value for the 8th round, though, at the same time. He's a wide receiver 1 and a beast. He was drafted in the 1st round. I mean, Will Fuller, how you feeling on Will? Hate him.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
I think he's a stud, but scared to ever take him because of all the injuries we deal with.
He's always hurt. He's fast, and he can't stay healthy. Larry Fitz right after. I love Larry Fitzgerald.
He is a top 15, top 20 guy every year, and
Every
he just gets discounted every single year in the drafts because of his age. So
yeah. I mean, I would have loved to have him in this 8th round.
yeah.
I mean,
so this is who I was hoping. I thought I was going to get. I didn't think Larry Fitzgerald was going to get picked before me in this 8th round. I had to go another receiver. I'm 4 picks after that. Sorry.
yeah. So let's jump down to your pick.
So first defense was taking the Bears, but down to my pick, the 10th pick of the 8th round, I went with a very, very high upside receiver. He was the very first receiver taken in the NFL draft this year, and that's Mr. N'Keal Harry to the New England Patriots. I think he's going to be that guy that kind of, in a sense, replaces Gronk, that big body guy that he's going to find down the field. I think N'Keal Harry definitely shapes out a big role in this offense soon to come. He's my first bench player, or no, sorry. Yeah, my first bench player on my offense. So I really have a lot of upside I have high hopes for him, but I think there is a lot of upside there in that Patriots offense, who they are out of a Gronkowski now, need that big body guy. They drafted him for a reason. The Patriots never draft receivers this high. They're notorious for getting the guys that are undrafted or way late in the rounds that they turn into studs and Hall of Famers. But N'Keal Harry, I think, is they obviously saw something amazing in him. I think we all saw the amazing talent. I went with him in the with my pick in round 8 because I need a receiver, simple as that, and he has a lot of upside compared to the other guys that you're looking at, like Dante Pettis, Cortland Sutton, who I think has a big breakout year. Emmanuel Sanders is always hurt, but he's out there, and so there's those area of guys. But I went with the high upside N'Keal Harry with this pick.
Yeah. So right after Dante Pettis was chosen. Obviously, he has potential to have a pretty good year, but once again, I'm not a big fan of him. Russell Wilson is who I chose with my 8th round pick. I needed a quarterback. He's every year, he's in that top 5, top 10 range. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a steal getting him in the 8th round. Really happy about him to pair him up with my boy Tyler Lockett.
Love that pairing.
I'm going to follow up the pick with Cortland Sutton, who once again, he had a decent year last year. Wasn't great, though. I mean, all he had was 42 receptions for 704 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had a couple of those games where you're really impressed by it. You're really happy with it. And there are those games where he gave you nothing. And you're like, why is this guy in my lineup? So, once again, I'm really happy to get him later on. He's more of a depth player than actual starter, but with the potential to be a starter and to be that number 1 in that offense with no Demaryius Thomas now. And with Emmanuel Sanders aging, getting older with a Achilles injury. Mm-hmm. We both love Emmanuel Sanders, and I think that he will have a good year again. But like I said, he's getting to the tail end of his career, and they're really going to have to rely on someone like Cortland Sutton to be that number 1 receiver like they drafted him to be.
They drafted him to be that guy.
So I'm really excited about this pick. Obviously,
I've been taking Cortland in a lot of mock drafts.
And I've been taking Emmanuel, and,
we flipped
piggyback on that. Obviously high risk. I'm hoping for high things from Sutton.
Yep.
A couple picks later, Jake's on the clock.
And now this is my 4th pick in a row where I'm going receiver. That just goes to show how if you don't take receiver in the first 5 rounds, I mean, I'm stocking up pretty heavy on receivers now because I have to.
Definitely.
So I went with a guy who we all know, and he's won me championships in the past. That's Emmanuel Sanders, just like we talked about. I don't need to talk too much about him. I think we all know what Emmanuel Sanders is about. I think if he can just stay on the field or get on the field, let's say, he has a role in that offense, and I think that just adds to the receiver depth that I need, So I'm really hoping that he can get through this injury safely and get on that field. Even if he doesn't play the first couple weeks, I'm okay with that. Get him right, get him on the field, because I need him for the long run. So I went with, in the 9th round, Emmanuel Sanders. So, a lot of guys, now I'm just going to kind of speed through this. Tom Brady went in round 9. Tight end who I love this year, a couple of them, David Njoku and Eric Ebron in this tier. So I think this is the round to go tight ends if you haven't drafted in that first 3 rounds of tight end. I really think if I didn't draft George Kittle, I would be going instead of this Emmanuel Sanders pick, I would be choosing a David Njoku or Eric Ebron all day. So that's where I really recommend maybe don't go in tight end early if that guy's not there or you have to reach on him and wait to the latter rounds. I mean, round 9, round 10 through 14, there's some solid tight ends who could potentially finish in the top 10.
Yeah, you talk about David Njoku and Eric Ebron getting taken. Right underneath them is Delaney Walker and Jack Doyle, who both had injury problems last year, but potentially both are top 5 for tight ends every year.
Yep.
Delaney Walker is a beast. We know he's getting a little older, but he's coming back healthy, and obviously he's relied on a lot by Mariota.
Such a veteran. He doesn't need to be out there for any OTAs, doesn't need to be out there for any practice. They want to just keep him right to get him on the field because that's where they know what they have with Delaney Walker. So
and then Jack Doyle, obviously, always coming up clutch. But with Eric Ebron there, it's just they run a lot of 2 tight end sets. I don't think it's a lot to be concerned about. I think you can take both those guys and be happy with them in this tier because obviously it's a lower tier. Moving on to the 10th round, a lot of bench players, a lot of high hopes for players. Going down to our picks, obviously you have pick 10 in this round.
Yep.
Let's talk about who you go with, Jay.
I went with another Bronco who I think has extremely high upside. We just got a little sample side of what Royce can do. He actually was, had a decent amount of touchdowns on the ground last year. But that's Royce Freeman. He could potentially, depending on where Philip Lindsay is with this injury, could have a bigger role this year. And I just think we saw very little of what Royce Freeman can actually do. I know this offense really likes him. I've been reading a lot of articles about this offseason and what he's been doing to get to that point where he can be that guy. Round 10, we're only taking upside from this point on.
I love it. I love your pick, and I mentioned it earlier when I talked about Philip Lindsay a little bit and why I didn't choose him is because of Royce Freeman. It's a year he's coming in healthy. Last year as a rookie, he wasn't healthy coming into the year, so he's going to have a full off season. Not to mention, this guy was the all-time lead rusher in college football history.
Monster.
So
they expect big things out of him.
Yeah,
they didn't draft him for no reason. I think he this year is going to be a big sophomore skyrocket in a sense instead of a sophomore slump. So that was my pick with the 10th round. I'll take that all day. I did go just depth there. And then Dill, you got your boy in round 10.
Got the first kicker in the draft a little early, obviously, but I got Greg Lake. This guy's a beast. He can hit
go wrong
60-yarders like nobody's business. So really happy with that pick, solidifying my kicker position. Following up with once again a player that I expect to hopefully come onto the scene, do a really good job.
Love this pick this round. First
Kyler
pick
Murray.
In the 11th
Hopefully
round.
he rushes for 1,000 yards this year, breaks Mike Vick's record, and then wins me a fantasy championship. Anyways, not a lot to talk about because obviously I drafted him as my second quarterback.
Okay, that's your second.
Yeah, he's my second quarterback. Obviously I took Russ a couple rounds earlier. I'm excited about this pick. But let's talk about exciting picks. You're a couple picks after me.
Talk about exciting. We both went with rookies. I went with a guy who, like you said, has all the tangibles to break out and be that number one guy. I think I am extremely high on DK. I don't know how a lot of people aren't. When Doug Baldwin left, I drafted DK Metcalf here in the 11th round. Might have been a little bit of a reach in a sense because I've seen him go undrafted in a lot of these mocks and stuff, but like we talked about, we always are going for upside. And
if you want a player, you have to reach.
So, I was at that point where I needed another receiver. I needed a very possibly high upside guy. And you're talking about, in this range, there's only other guys like Dante Moncrief, Jamison Crowder, Deshaun Hamilton, who I think is a sneaky guy this year on the Denver Broncos. But why not reach on a guy, DK Metcalf, who could potentially carve out a number one role in that offense without, Tyler Lockett, I think, is always going to be that slot guy. He's just not built to be a number one guy, but still can put up numbers like that. But DK is going to be that big body, down the field, red zone monster. So I went with high upside DK. We don't need to preach too much on that.
Yeah, so following that, we talked about a few receivers that were taken after. Jared Goff was taken in this round, another couple kickers. Moving on to round 12, a little run with a couple running backs, a couple receivers. We have Deion Lewis, Theo Riddick. Obviously, I think those guys both can potentially carve out nice roles. James Washington is a player to look for, but let's talk about these rookie receivers. Marquise Brown, Mecole Hardman taken back-to-back.
Love it.
Both speedsters that have high potential to make big plays. Obviously,
love Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, he's a playmaker for sure. They need that in Baltimore. They don't have a number one receiver there.
Yep.
And then obviously Hardman, they keep talking about taking over that Tyreek Hill role, which he has the potential to do it. So
he's one of the fastest guys in this class, or in that draft class, and I think he's just that perfect guy. Very similar story to Tyreek Hill, kind of under the radar, but could shape out a huge role in that offense and just be that speed that they are missing out on if they do lose Tyreek Hill.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Love both those rookies.
And then Kareem Hunt getting taken in this round.
Could potentially be a steal.
Yeah.
He's playing he has 8 games to play. Last year he played 12 games and he still finished as a top 7 running back. So I really think that they're going to involve Kareem Hunt a lot, and And what scares me is, like we talked about yesterday, was that Nick Chubb I don't have as high on my rankings as his potential is, just simply because halfway through the year I see that a bit of a drop off with usage when it comes to Chubb. But
what
anyhow,
I do love about Chubb, real quick, is last year he still was kind of like sharing the workload with others and just dominated. And then obviously they traded Carlos Hyde because of that reason, and he ended up taking the job. If he does well for the first 8 weeks of the year, I do think that, you know, his role will drop a little bit, but I still think he's going to produce. So I mean, don't be scared to take him, but it's scary to invest a second round pick in someone that you don't know what's to come in the second half of the year. Anyways, moving on to our next picks. Obviously,
and really quick, just on that Kareem Hunt, he played 12 games last year and was a top 12 player. So sorry, just a quick stat correction there.
RB1.
But still, RB1, top 15 running back, and didn't even play a full 16 games. I think there's huge upside there. Kareem Hunt. Go ahead, Dill. Sorry.
No, it's you take the floor. It's your
my pick
now. Yeah.
Did you already mention Rams defense? Rams got taken right before my pick here. One of the top defenses this year, obviously. So getting that in the 12th round, I think 12th round.
I was trying to get that.
I think it's a great time to get the Rams defense, or a top tier defense in general. So I though went, of course, another receiver route, just for depth. And this guy got signed in the offseason to the Colts. That's Devin Funchess. I think they're really in need of a big receiver, a big body receiver. Devin Funchess being 6'4", I think is that guy. I think he had, he's very, very consistent in a sense. Nothing too crazy, but I do think that he's going to have a nice role with the Indianapolis Colts, and I think Andrew Luck's going to start trusting him and putting the ball up there, and he could potentially be a red zone monster. So I went with another high upside guy on a very, very high powered offense, and that was Devin Funchess. So
I like that pick a lot. Obviously, he has potential to be a number one. In Carolina, he showed plenty of flashes, and that's why I made that huge trade for him.
Sure.
And he sunk my ship. But anyways, my next pick, these next two picks were both rookies. I got a lot of rookies in this draft based off hoping for the best upside possible. I went with Darrell Henderson, obviously Los Angeles Rams, running back, rookie, 1,900 rushing yards,
Gurley.
22 rushing touchdowns. I mean,
Monster.
This guy in college football, he was lighting college football on fire. Every week they were talking about him. He was in the news because he rushed for 200 yards and 5 touchdowns.
And from Memphis.
Yeah.
You don't hear about that all the time. So the guy's a stud.
He is. He's an absolute stud. He can catch the ball. He averaged 15 yards a catch last year. So, this guy's a baller. And, they've compared him to Alvin Kamara. Obviously, I'm not saying he's Alvin Kamara, and he's not going to be Alvin Kamara. He's going to be Darrell Henderson.
Didn't they say they plan to use that Alvin Kamara role, in a sense, in that Rams offense?
Yeah, they did. And, once again, they keep saying Todd Gurley's fine, Todd Gurley's healthy, Todd Gurley's our guy. And I'm going to believe it until I see differently. Once again, this is one of those picks that's just insurance. Maybe it might happen, maybe it might not, okay? But we all know that he can ball. He's a beast. He set college records. There's not much more to say about him except that if Todd Gurley does have a knee issue, this guy's going to pop into a top 5, top 10 running back range. Moving to my 13th round.
That's a bold statement.
It is a bold statement, but it's the truth. We have one of the best offensive lines in the league, one of the best offensive systems in the league, so you could throw a lot of guys.
No
C.J.
doubt.
Anderson, top 5 running back when the Rams threw him in there. I think Darrell Henderson has a lot more talent than C.J. Anderson.
Back-to-back pick deal. You have the first pick in the 13th round.
Yeah, Andy Isabella for the Arizona Cardinals. Once again, rookie, 102 receptions, 1,700 yards, and 13 touchdowns receiving in college or on his senior year last year. This guy is a baller. He is so fast, 4.3 speed. I think that with their offense moving to that shotgun, quick plays, there are going to be a lot of quick passes to Andy Isabella, hoping that he breaks a few, which he will with that speed. Obviously, he has an easy route to winning the job. There's not very much receiver talent in Arizona right now. Obviously, Larry Fitz is their guy, but behind him, there's not much. Christian Kirk is the guy who showed flashes last year. And then they drafted Hakeem Butler in the 4th round, so he's definitely someone that is looked at as a red zone threat, outside receiver. But I do think Andy Isabella carves out a big role in this offense. And once again, I'm in 13th round now. This is just guys that I'm really hoping end up being the guy.
Exactly.
Right after him, Deebo Samuel, another rookie taken. I really like his situation in San Francisco as well.
Yep.
But let's move on to your pick, Jay.
Yep.
Round 13. What did you go with?
So I went strictly as a backup for Mr. Aaron Rodgers. I went a rookie. You just drafted one rookie, 2 rookies in a row.
Yeah.
So I went rookie.
Actually,
I'm sorry, I drafting a 1-year pro. I don't know why I said rookie. That's Lamar Jackson. Obviously, I talk about a runner. You drafted Kyler Murray. I look at Lamar Jackson as someone who's going to rush for 1,000 yards potentially behind talking about one of the best offensive lines in the league. They're going to be a run-first offense. I think it's a lot of RPOs. I think, Lamar Jackson's best when he has the ball in his hands and he's running up the sideline. So I went with him as strictly my backup. He has straight QB, I think, big QB1 upside. I'm taking him as a backup right now, just for filling in a bye week or, whatever may happen down the road. Maybe he blows up and does do really well. Someone needs a quarterback. That's trade bait right there. I love Lamar Jackson's upside. They are, implementing a new offense under new offensive coordinator Greg Roman. So it's going to be interesting to see how Lamar Jackson carries on to that offense and gets going with that. It's going to take a little bit of learning, but with the new system, I think there's new hope, and he's going to be able to hopefully ball out. And I'm just going depth here. So got Lamar Jackson, love the value there. That was my first pick of the 13th round. So just kind of speeding through a lot of depth players. I do like, these are still areas where you can draft tight ends. Like, look at Kyle Rudolph going right now. I know there's that talk of Irv Smith being in there as well. But they're about to re-sign Kyle Rudolph. I feel like he might be their guy, and he's potentially a tight end 1 in that offense. So, and then you look at more receiver depth, more running back depth. Duke Johnson, Carlos Hyde. I do like the pick of A.J. Brown in this round. I think he has a high upside guy. Going into the 14th round, we have another tight end, Austin Hooper, who he went with
There's
the
a
first
run
pick.
on tight ends here. I mean, these are all solid tight ends, too,
Definitely.
that I would probably prefer over a Kyle Rudolph.
I would, for sure. And that's where, too, drafting, if you don't draft a tight end high, man, the picks are rounds 12 through 16. There are some gems in this tight end range. So definitely look out there. Greg Olsen, potential top 10 tight end being taken in the 14th round. Jordan Reed with a rookie quarterback, Dwayne Haskins, who may rely on him constantly, could be a top 10 tight end at the end of the year. So not to mention the rookie, TJ Hawkinson, who's going to be the number 1 tight end on the Detroit Lions. I love him. He was my favorite tight end coming out of the draft this year. So lot of depth at tight end. We get to my pick. I take my defense. I grabbed who I think is a top 3 defense this year, the Jaguars. I was surprised to still see them out there in the third to last round. So I snagged them up, went with Jaguars just to continue to build out my whole team. So went Jaguars. Dill, you were 2 picks after me.
Yeah, so I went in a way of another rookie, Damian Harris.
Shocker.
Yeah, running back for New England from Alabama. He was the number 1 running back in that offense over Josh Jacobs. A lot of talk about him. I unfortunately dropped him shortly after the draft and picked up Mike Davis. So I'm going to talk about Mike Davis a little bit. Obviously, Mike Davis last year kind of came more onto the scene with Seattle. There was a couple of weeks where he was the RB1 because of injuries there, and he showed that he can handle the load, not only just running the ball, but catching the ball as well. So They have him, and they have David Montgomery. I think they will give David Montgomery the opportunity to start. If he can't capitalize, then Mike Davis will be the guy, and I think he'll do well. I followed that pickup with my defense finally. I got Ravens defense, which I think is a steal in the 15th round. Seriously. They're always a top defense every single year. Even when they lose all these starters, they still manage to replace them. They do a really good job developing their backups to become starters. So I do think the Ravens defense, once again, is a top-tier defense, and I'm stoked on the pick. A couple picks later, Jake finally gets a kicker, which this is one of my favorite kickers in the entire league.
Definitely. Houston kicker, Kaimi. I don't know how to say his first name. I'm not even going to try and attempt it again. But Fairbairn, I think we all know Fairbairn. Top 3 kicker in the league, in my opinion. And so I was second to last round.
He won me a couple weeks last year.
He had 20-point games. I was like, anyways. Super, and you look at his stats from last year too. He lit it up. So obviously, drafted him as my kicker. My whole offense or my whole team is now solidified. I have one last pick that's going into the 16th round. A lot of defenses, a lot of kickers being drafted in between my kicker pick and my next pick. Guy, just really quick to touch base on running back. one of the last running backs taken is Ito Smith. He was taken in the 16th round right before I chose Jamal Williams with my pick, third to last in the 16th round. I would have chosen Ito Smith probably over Jamal Williams if he was there. I thought he was going to be. I think Ito Smith, we're talking about
what a steal.
Devontae Freeman, who I can't tell you the last season he played in all 16 games. What?
I said nice steal by B. Hall.
Oh, but he's going to get work. I think this could be a bigger breakout year for Ito Smith, too, because he's going to have a potentially, if anything happens to Devontae, which granted always usually does, even though the writing's on the wall for Devontae to take it off, Ito Smith is going to be right there to just pick up any slack if there is any.
Highly recommend to pick up Ito Smith if you have Devontae Freeman. I mean, he's
especially if you're getting them in the last round. That's an easy pick. But like I said, I went with Jamal Williams. Didn't get my Aaron Jones, so I followed that up with Jamal Williams, who actually ended the season pretty well. And I hear nothing but great things coming into this season. He bulked up even more. He looks like a more of a bully back, and that'll pair nicely with that Aaron Jones, that quick guy. So I went with Jamal Williams just as a high upside. Got to get my Packers in. And Dill, to finish it off, you went defense, high upside defense to say the least.
Once again, I went with another top tier defense, or potentially top tier defense in the Texans. I mean, with the Ravens and Texans, both defenses, I mean, I'm feeling really, really good about my team, and I do think that I'm going to set the world on fire with my team and all its rookies. So you better watch out because
good rookie class this year, no doubt. A lot of high upside players, but I thought that was really cool, Dill. We just walked you through a whole 16-round, real high risk draft. I'm happy with my team. I went a way different draft route. I know you went a pretty different draft route too. Both of us got 2 of the top 3 tight ends, which I can't complain about.
No, not at all.
And I can't wait to whoop your ass and everyone else's ass this year. So I'm excited.
Yeah, right.
But it'll be interesting to see how many guys are even on our team by the beginning of the year.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, this draft is a little bit bigger than our usual draft, so we have a couple more bench spots. But it was definitely fun, and I'm really excited. It's just getting me going. And soon we're going to be doing our dynasty draft, so we'll definitely update you on that dynasty draft. Obviously, dynasty is a little bit different. We can touch base on another podcast and kind of explain what dynasty is.
Yeah.
And once again, if you love fantasy football like we do, highly recommend trying out this dynasty league. It's all day, every day. It's once the season's over, you kind of start back up. And then once we get into OTAs, training camp, you got to be trading, drafting. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to do a lot of active things with your league.
And talk about how we're just touching on how great of a rookie class this is. This makes me so excited for our dynasty draft because it's all rookie players and guys that are on the free agency waiver wire, obviously. But the rookie class this year, we're talking Josh Jacobs, DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, N'Keal Harry, all these guys who are potentially going to be studs and be the faces of the NFL in years to come. It's going to be exciting to be able to draft those guys. But anyhow, that was really fun, Dill. We're back. I'm excited. There's going to be a lot more coming at you guys. You guys got to follow us on every outlet out there, Instagram, Facebook. Follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube. And I'm excited to be back in the booth, Dill. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
I can't wait. Yeah. I mean, I can't wait to go over my rankings. I can't wait to compare to you. And I can't wait to get the season going. I can't wait to go with our dynasty draft. I mean, I'm just excited. I'm excited fantasy football is finally back. Football's back here, which means fantasy football is damn near around the corner. So, guys, just continue on preparing for your drafts. Continue on coming back to the league for
get the best advice.
Yeah,
we're gonna bring it to you. Only nothing but the truth and win you leagues at the end of the day.
www.theleaguefantasyfootball.wordpress.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at The League Podcast and on Twitter at The League Pod. All of our podcasts will be posted on SoundCloud at The League Podcast as well.